I'm Charles Galda, your host for Vision New England's Church in Action program. This week, we're talking about a number of new initiatives that will advance the kingdom by doing justice so that our light shines in such a way that people see our good works and praise our Father in heaven. And we're talking with Steve Spear. Steve is the Director of Church Engagement at World Vision, a great partner of ours, along with many others in New England and across the world. Steve, thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure to be with you, and so grateful to you and Vision New England, and to be a part of what you're doing and what we get to do together by, making Jesus known, advancing the gospel, advancing the kingdom, accelerating. And so this is great. What a thrill. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And maybe for folks to get you to know you a little bit, could you share a little bit about your bio and how you came to be at World Vision?
Yeah, sure. Well, I grew up in New England. I was born and raised in central Vermont. So of course, I love New England. And growing up, I grew up in a home, I would say, Charles, that there was a belief in God, but there wasn't necessarily a followership of God. And I think my mom and dad were seeking Jesus, even though they didn't know they were seeking Jesus. And my mom and I found our way into the Paramount Theater in Barre, Vermont, when I was 12 years old. And we saw a Billy Graham movie called A Time to Run. And at the end of that movie, both my mom and I made a walk up the aisle, and both of us gave our heart to Christ. And God obviously then started the journey. At age 18, I felt a call into ministry and went to Bible college and got a 4-year degree, and then started ministering. Was in Iowa for 4 years as a youth pastor. And while a youth pastor there, we heard of this really blossoming ministry in the Chicago area called Willow Creek Community Church. And my wife and I just got pretty enthralled by that a little bit over the years, and went to some conferences. And 4 years later, and it goes back in 1990, we moved to the Chicago area from a small town in Iowa to the big city of Chicago. And we've been a part of the Willow family now for 35 years. And the first 6 years I was a volunteer, worked in the marketplace, and then took a staff position, a pastoral position, and was on staff at Willow for 16 years, serving when we started on multi-site campus. I pastored for 10 years, our first launch that we did at Willow. And then God was doing a work inside my heart for the most vulnerable in a kind of a radical way. And after a 16-year ministry stint at Willow, I felt called to resign my role in order to do an 18-month volunteer project with World Vision. And at the end of that 18-month volunteer position with World Vision, I then took a staff role with World Vision, and that's kind of taken us up to the point that I've got my wife, Frances. We've been married in 2 weeks, we'll celebrate 39 years of marriage in 2 weeks. So we're pretty pumped about that. We have 2 children, 2 grandchildren, and we feel, super, super blessed.
Well, congratulations on your upcoming anniversary.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
And so now a volunteer 18-month job sounds like I'm not getting paid.
That's right.
How did you do that?
Yeah. Well, it was one of those things where, you go, how it is, Charles, you get sort of moved beyond your comfort zone, and you say yes to something, and you're going to go, oh Lord, we now know that there needs to be a provision here while we do this. It ended up being about 18 months. And we just had to, we had some great friends that rallied around us for this particular project that we did with World Vision. And it was sort of a pioneering thing that had never been done before in World Vision. So it wasn't like World Vision was going to say, hey, we're going to pay you for it. It was kind of a unique thing that we did. So it was just by the love and support of some great people around us and the provision of the Lord that allowed that 18-month to be what it was.
So do you mean to say that when God calls us to crazy things and we're faithful and obedient, he'll provide?
I think so.
That might be in the Bible someplace.
It might be, right? Oh my goodness. Oh.
And so you wound up, so you volunteer for 18 months, turns into a paid position at World Vision. Tell folks a little bit more about World Vision, please.
Yeah, for those who may not know kind of who we are and what we do, we're an international partnership of Christians. And our mission is to follow Jesus. Pure and simple, is to follow Jesus. And we do this by being proximate with the most vulnerable. is to come alongside the oppressed in our world, and some of the most fragile, hardest context in the world. And our whole purpose is obviously is to promote human transformation, to seek justice, but above all is to bear witness to the gospel of Jesus. And we've been doing this now for, about 70, we're in our 75th anniversary this year, and we do this in nearly 100 countries around the world. And, when it comes to the church, our greatest desire, obviously, is to, as I mentioned, is to bear witness to the gospel. But our deepest desires are to serve the pastors that we, have partnership with and beyond, and to see our churches flourish. We just love seeing our churches flourish, and we want to bring an end to extreme poverty.
Now, you will sometimes hear in churches somebody say, well, hey, there's a lot of people here in America who need help. And before we start worrying about overseas, how we should do that. So speak to that theologically, if you would, but then also practically.
Yeah. Well, I think we all know, obviously in Acts, we kind of know that concentric circle world of, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the world. And that is, we believe deeply in that, obviously. We feel a deep calling, obviously, within World Vision, where we feel like, and we know this to be true, that any of us, as we want to become closer and become a disciple of Jesus and grow in our discipleship of Jesus, one of the things that we need to do is become more proximate with the poor, more proximate with the most vulnerable. And we actually grow in our discipleship by doing that. And we really feel a special calling, how we both cheerlead and prompt and urge the church to do that on a global level. But what's really interesting is how we know that begins here at home as well. And so while we at World Vision have our focus globally, we have a really strong domestic arm as well that really does, when it comes to humanitarian emergencies that happen domestically, and even ongoing ways in which we're serving some of our hardest hit and most needed communities, even here domestically as well. We kind of often refer to it kind of in a here and there sort of a framework of thinking.
And I know you're doing direct work in the U.S., so I was teeing that up very intentionally. But you're also doing tons of indirect work where you're enabling the churches and pastors and ministries who are doing that direct work too. That's
right. Yeah, both with, in many, many ways, we have such great relationships with, providers, whether that be a Costco or an Amazon. We have storehouses around the United States, and how we can come alongside churches with products and goods that can be then distributed in their communities, where there's great need. And that's been a very practical way, of course, as you mentioned before, practical. And then, of course, our work internationally, in the countries that we serve, extremely, we may dive into some of that as we get going forward here in our time together, but how that is practically done as well.
And so I remember you sharing, and so I wanted to just walk through it because it's a fun story. You talk about running, and that's impacted not just your personal life and health and stuff like that, but your spiritual life and your connection with World Vision. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. My wife and I, started knowing about World Vision before we got married. We got married in 1986. And about a month after we got married, we began sponsoring our first child with World Vision. And we deeply enjoyed that experience. And for the next 20 years, we deeply enjoyed experiences of sponsoring children. And then in 2006, a colleague of mine, a pastor colleague at Willow, ran the Chicago Marathon. And it was the first marathon he'd ever done in his life. He did it with World Vision. At that point, there was a new arm within World Vision that was encouraging people to either run a marathon and raise money for clean water. And my buddy did it. And the day after he ran the Chicago Marathon, Charles, he called me and he said, "Hey, Steve, you need to run the Chicago Marathon with me next year with World Vision." And I had a simple 2-letter answer for him, Charles. It was N-O. And it was,
I'm with you.
Yeah. And it was followed by the phrase, "I hate running." And for the next 4 months, my buddy was trying to talk me into doing this. And he said, "It's for a great cause." And I said, "I know it's a great cause. We can sponsor another child. I don't need to run a marathon." But then you know how this goes, Charles, and we as pastors who are listening know how this goes. we as pastors all the time are inviting people to step beyond their comfort zones and to, go beyond their fears, right? And the Lord met me in a quiet moment about 4 months, after me telling my buddy no. It was in April of 2007. And I felt the Lord saying, Steve, all the time you're doing this as a pastor, inviting people beyond their fears, why are you so unwilling to train and run the Chicago Marathon? And in that moment, Charles, I felt this is a step of obedience. I'm supposed to do this. And so I actually adopted 4 goals for that first marathon. Goal number 1 was just to hate running less every time I ran. Goal number 2 was to train well enough to make it to the starting line. The third goal was to finish before they closed the course. They weren't high goals at all, Charles. And then the final goal was to raise $1,000 for clean water. And I really thought it was going to be a one and out deal, but God was beginning to reverse something in me that I didn't even know existed at the time. But he used the running, he used that to begin reverse what I call a false narrative in my life. And then something started happening within me, and I ran another marathon, and then I ran another marathon, and then I began running some ultra marathons. And after doing that from like about 2008 until 2012, I sensed the Lord, prompting me to do something kind of crazy. And this is where that 18-month volunteer project came in. I sensed the Lord inviting me, it sounds kind of crazy, to resign my role at Willow and to run across the United States. So there's just an incredible backstory for how that even transpired, but it did transpire. And in 2013, I became, I think, the 268th person on record since early 1900s, when records were kept, to successfully complete a transcontinental run from Los Angeles to New York. And I wouldn't have ever done it unless there was a great reason, a great cause, so that we were able to raise $500,000 for clean water as a result of that run. And so there was some months of preparation on the front end. The run itself took about 5 months. I ran a marathon a day for about 5 months in a row. It was 150 days. So it was a little on the crazy side. And then when I finished the run, World Vision was like, well, that was maybe, that was the most arduous interview we've ever done with anybody. And I didn't have a job. And they said, well, why don't you come and help us do some things as we engage churches around the United States. So,
and so people are sponsoring you. That's how you're raising money, right? So much a mile.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If individuals just kind of jumped on and said, hey, whether it was a per mile thing or just, hey, we just believe deeply in what you're doing. Companies did, individuals, just to say, let's be a part of, we know there's a clean water crisis. You've effectively taught us about that, Steve, in the developing world. We want to be a part of this. And
that's where World Vision spends that money that's raised through the marathons.
That's right. Yeah. And I think one of the things, and again, some people know this, some people don't, but $50 is all it takes to bring clean drinking water to one person that lasts. Mm-hmm. So when you kind of put it in that context, and you just think through whether you're raising $100 or $1,000 or $500,000, you kind of divide that by 50, and that many people have clean water, sanitation, hygiene. And that's where, one of the cool things we're very proud of at World Vision is that we are the world's #1 non-governmental provider of clean drinking water in the world. And we are so grateful to be in that place to do that. But what's also fun, we could get into this later, but in as much as we're bringing that clean, fresh water for the body, we're so fixated on bringing Jesus's living water for the soul as well. Where we're at. So it has been indeed quite a journey, and one that I never would have dreamed that I would have, been a part of, or even done anything remotely close that involved the word running.
Yeah. Well, and that one run, if I'm doing my math right, that's clean water for 10,000 people.
That's right. Yeah. Right? Yeah.
And so I think it's wonderful to hear that God can redeem even running.
That's right.
For you.
Well, I don't know, Charles. There could be something here. Here.
And countless others, I hope. Just not me. Because I agree, God moves us out of our comfort zones, but I really don't want to move me into a hate and dread zone.
Well, you just need to hate it less. We got a couch to finish line training plan, Charles. We'll take you from the couch to the finish line and then right back to the couch again afterwards.
Yeah, okay.
I promise you, we can do this.
Now, talk about how that impacted your spirituality, though, because you mentioned that too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I found this convergence factor happens with me in running. And I'm this person, even though I've been at this now since 2007, I'm not one of these people that love running. How many runner's highs have I gotten? Not a whole lot, but there's a convergence that happens with both the physical and the spiritual. And then when you're doing it with other people, obviously the relational and the emotional as well. But I found for me, some of my most rich times of community with God have been just out on a path. And, I get kind of emotional about it at times, but just 3 days ago, I was doing a run and I was listening to just some music. I had my phone on speaker. I was on a quiet path. And I just found myself raising my arms in worship, Charles, as I'm on this path. And I'm thinking to myself, after my arms were up in the air for a couple of minutes, I'm going, well, somebody behind me is probably, if there is anybody behind me running, they're probably going, I don't know if he's raising his hands because he needs help or, what's happening in his world right now. But there's a connection that's happened, that God has used. And there has been a little there's all kinds of slogans and things that run through your head at times when you're out there. But one of them always has been, when I run, he provides. When I run, he provides. And whether that's with a prayer for someone, an answered prayer, there's a provision. Again, it's been this inextricable link that I've kind of seen. And then when you add in the component of maybe doing it with some people, and you get a chance to get to know them a little bit as you're doing some of these things, it really is quite remarkable. And there's a saying out there that true community happens. I think we know this when you laugh and you cry. Anytime we laugh and cry with someone, we know that we have really achieved some community. We add in another word that if you laugh, cry, and sweat with someone, there is something odd when we physically co-labor next to somebody, building something. So anyway, it's been rather fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's when we struggle together, right?
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit. You mentioned that you knew about child sponsorship and were sponsoring a child or children very, very early on. But we've been hearing about something new that relates to sponsorship called Chosen.
Yes.
And so tell us more about that, because that's really fascinating.
It really is. We feel like, World Vision, we've been on the cutting edge of child sponsorship. First really began in 1953, with our founder, Bob Pierce. And we feel like we've always been on that cutting edge of sponsorship. But about 6 or 7 years ago, our new CEO, Edgar Sandoval, as he joined our team, there were a couple of things that Edgar really wanted to drive deep within us at World Vision. One of them is just our commitment to the gospel. How do we more and more just drive our commitment and have that lived out and the witness born out of us more and more? The second one was in the innovation of new ideas. And so there was a small group of people that were really centered around, okay, how can the gospel be made more known, combining that with new ideas? And out of that small group of people, a person emerged with a phrase, and they simply said, we've been doing child sponsorship as people enter the child sponsorship relationship, which is partnering a person here in the U.S. with a child in the developing world in a compassionate relationship. We've been doing it by having people choose a child. What would it look like if we reversed that and we empowered the child to choose their sponsor? And it was an innocent sentence used in a meeting, but it then just caught fire to the point where we tried it for the first time to say, instead of, at a church service, instead of people hearing about the role of growing closer to the heart of Jesus by getting closer to the most proximate and seeking justice that way, instead of people going out into a lobby and seeing hundreds of child packets that they would choose from, what if instead people went out into the lobby, they had their picture taken, and then that picture was 4 days later in a community in Kenya, for example, and children entered a room and the power was put in the child's hands to choose their sponsor. And then what if the following Sunday, people came back to church who had said yes to being chosen, and they opened an envelope and they saw in that envelope the child who chose them holding the picture they took the previous Sunday. And this thing, we talk about revival, this was a revival kind of an idea, a revival kind of movement within World Vision. But we've seen this now. We've now launched Chosen Trails in the last 5 years. We've launched Chosen in almost 700 churches domestically. And it has had this revival feel, not only within the world of the gospel, but in the way that people have engaged within their congregation. And then we've even just seen with a recent study how people involved in Chosen, their generosity in the church goes up, their engagement has gone up within the church. We've just seen this come alongside some of the things that we as pastors want to see happen day in and day out, month in and month out, with just people who are attending our church, just in regular growing in their relationship with the God and with their church, but then also partnering them in ways in a pretty exciting fashion with a child in the developing world. It has been unbelievable.
Yeah, to me, it's just fascinating. And you promised me that you never have a case where somebody doesn't, people who think about my sporting experience in grade school, you don't have cases where people don't get picked. Somebody always picks you.
Always get chosen. You do. Everybody does get chosen. And not only that, it is fascinating to hear the stories from children of why they chose someone. It may have reminded them of maybe of a family member who had passed, or maybe it reminds them of something that they envision, or it could be the necklace that a lady might be wearing, or could be the smile on your face, Charles. You have a beautiful smile. They would say, "I love that guy's smile," and then the children write a letter. Not only do you get that picture, but you then receive a letter from the child of why they chose you.
That's so cool. And look, them having agency.
Yes.
Right. Where in a world where they probably don't have a lot.
None.
Them getting to pick is probably a big deal to them.
It is. I mean, we know that, poverty at its core is the lack of choice. And so when you can give this level of a choice, children are like, really, we get to choose. You're exactly right in that agency.
And so share, I mentioned earlier on, you do tons of work with churches in New England.
Yeah.
And so share if you would, if you have maybe a story, it doesn't have to be from New England, but if it was from New England, folks would love to hear that. But a story or two about some of the work you're doing.
Well, I mean, there's several that come to mind. One easy one. I mean, on a previous episode, you had Dave Ripper, who just came out with a new book. I think experiencing Scripture as
a disciple of Jesus,
as a disciple of Jesus, and Crossway, where Dave pastors. When Dave and the Crossway family heard about some of these movements within World Vision, Chosen, the idea to put one foot in front of the other, whether that's through what we call the Global 6K, which everybody knows about a 5K. 6K is the average distance women and girls walk in the developing world, and we do a annual Global 6K. Anybody on any age can walk it. You can run it. I did the Global 6K 1 year with a 78-year-old woman, and she had a walker. I walked with a 78-year-old woman for 6 kilometers, and she was like over the moon that she could be making a difference. She raised $8,000 by doing that Global 6K, with her walker. So when Dave and the Crossway family heard about Chosen and the beauty of what we just described a moment ago, and connecting people even with their identity with Christ, right? When they heard about the beauty of Chosen and the 6K, and even this idea of doing a half marathon or a full marathon, Dave was like, "We're all in. We want to be doing each of these expressions." And Crossway's done. They've done Chosen. They're getting ready to do a second version, what we call an encore. Conversation is with Dave and the team to do an encore. They've done Team World Vision. They've done the Global 6K. It's been fascinating. Everything from, obviously Crossway, and then Symphony Church with Barry
King,
and to see Symphony, obviously a congregation made up of young professionals, college students, to see Symphony just merge into Chosen, and it just ignited, it just further ignited the work that Symphony is doing in a very creative way. And then they also jumped in on the 6K. They've been doing the 6K as well. And it's just been again, it's been a hoot. just seeing, different churches like Crossway and Symphony and others. And probably, we could talk for, more time about even more of the stories that are happening in the New England area and how grateful we are to be partnering with you and Vision New England and the kinds of things that are important to both of us.
Same here. Where can folks go to learn more?
Yeah, the best thing is if you just go to worldvision.org, and they will probably end up dropping this in the chat somewhere as well, but worldvision.org, and then just / VNE, Vision New England Chosen.
VNE Chosen.
VNE Chosen. Worldvision.org, VNE Chosen.
Perfect. And if anybody has trouble, contact Vision New England. We'll get you connected too. Steve, thank you so much for being with us today. But the work you do too, I'm reminded of, I'll paraphrase Tony Campolo, who always used to ask, Jesus said, the poor will always be with you. What poor people will be with you today? And for most of us, the answer is they're not. They're someplace else. And you give us a way to bridge that distance. So there's a way in which the poor can be with us today. And so thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you to you, Charles, as well. Thank you for the vision of Vision New England and how that spurs us on as well at World Vision. We're so grateful.
Thanks. Us too. Same here. It's reciprocal. To support this program and accelerate evangelism, go to visionnewengland.org and click on Donate, or click Member to become a partner with us. This program is supported by the Palau Association, who are dedicated to proclaiming the good news, uniting the church, and impacting cities worldwide.
At Leadership Transformations, we believe that when you have the right resources to help you slow down and experience a deep and refreshing connection to God, you can become the discerning leader you know you are created to be. Friends, Steve Macchia here, and I have a free gift for your soul. It's called Pathways. Pathways is our weekly email aimed at offering you soul-nourishing content for the journey. It contains readings, prayers, spiritual practices, a link to the Discerning Leader podcast, as well as information about all of our upcoming soul care retreats, workshops, and online offerings. So head on over to leadershiptransformations.org today and sign up for this free resource. It will help you slow down and be more. God bless you, friends.